Hi everyone! So today I wanted to share with you 12 life lessons that I had to learn throughout my journey of personal development and spiritual growth. Let's go! So here's the first one. Actions and decisions based on fear don't bring happiness. Now, what do I mean by happiness? I'm not talking about some temporary relief. I'm not talking about some sort of satisfaction that's also just temporary, that's not long-lasting. So actually, I mean that actions and decisions based on fear don't bring anything long-lasting or worthwhile. So for example, you might be running out of money and you think, oh, I need to get a new job quickly. I need to do something fast. I need to, you can actually recognize it by this voice in your head that says, you need to do something fast. That's almost always a sign that you're not gonna get the result that you actually want. And maybe you can remember a situation in your own life where you have done something out of fear. You've made a certain decision and you've done the steps and then you've created more fear. And even though externally you might have improved the situation in a certain way, but internally you didn't feel that brought you any closer to what was really important. Now I can tell you 1,000 stories where this was true for me. So when these thoughts pop up in my head again of that I need to do something or else everyone will die, I will die, something bad will happen, I can already distance myself better from these thoughts and then realign myself so I can make better decisions. Great. Now let's move on to the second life lesson, which sounds like this. It's not about getting more things done. It's about doing what really matters. Sounds beautiful. And I can already hear a lot of voices saying, if only it were that easy, because it sounds beautiful, right? But how do you actually do it? How do you prioritize? How do you actually distinguish what's important and what's just there to fill up your time? And it brings me back to one of those days where I made huge to-do lists for myself. And then at the end of the day, after checking each of those boxes, I just felt emptiness and I couldn't understand why. Because I thought to myself, I've done such a good job at doing everything that I've planned. So what's the matter? Why don't I feel good? What's missing? I couldn't understand. Until I realized that I was not enjoying my own life. I felt like a function, like an employee in my own life. And eventually that brought me to the understanding that some things are just out there as tasks that need to be done. Alright, they need to be done, but it doesn't mean that they're important, and it doesn't mean that they have to be done right now. And that's actually a pretty useful tool that we can use for establishing which tasks need to be done, which tasks need to be scheduled, delegated or eliminated, which is called the Eisenhower matrix. It's a nice coaching instrument. However, again, it is very tempting for the mind to think that instead of doing this exercise, we'll just start doing the tasks. No, that's a trap of the mind. That's not a reality. Because if we do the exercise, we will end up saving lots of time. So I'm just saying, all the tools are out there, but it's just about getting into the right mentality to be able to use them for a benefit. Okay, so let's move on to the third life lesson. It's easier to walk the path I already know, even if it brings more suffering. That was a hard one for me because I didn't realize that suffering, in a way, is a choice because it's a consequence of a decision that I made. And of course, it's always easier to blame circumstances or other people when things don't go well than admitting that inside of myself there's actually something that contributes to the problem that I'm facing. So in a way, if my body suffers because I ate a lot of snacks at night, it is still me who ate the snacks. And it's still me who didn't ask for help, who didn't ask for guidance, who didn't reach out when it was difficult. But oftentimes it's a lot easier to say, well, there was no one to guide me, there was no one to help me. But the question is, did I actually reach out? Did I actually do my part? Did I make an effort to seek? Did I make an effort to be sincere and open to receive? Because I found that the old reactions are actually more familiar and more comfortable, which are the reactions of disbelief, of distrust, of skepticism. And that has to do with hidden rewards. And for me, that hidden reward was so I could justify my lack of taking action, my lack of willingness to grow, to change and to ultimately become the person that I actually wanted to be. Alright, ready to move on to number 4. No one is going to help me if I'm not willing to help myself. Because you can have the best teachers, you can have the best advice, you can have the best coaches, therapists, mentors, but there comes a point in your life where you need to walk the path with your own 2 feet. And if you're not willing to make an effort, then you can really ask yourself whether you want this change in your life to happen at all. And it also took me a while to realize that, even if it makes complete and perfect sense. Because there was a time when I was taking up some practices just until a certain point where I felt better. And then I quit those practices. I was like, oh, I don't need them. Everything is fine now. Until I got myself into another downfall again. And then there was the whole cycle of getting better, stopping the practice, getting worse, and needing the practice again, needing to do something, reaching out. And the cycle continued for some time. Until I realized that life doesn't work this way. I need to have a method. I need to have a system where I take care of myself, both physically and mentally and emotionally and spiritually. And all of those different aspects of life need to be taken care of. No one else is going to do it for me until I make the decision. But it took me a while to come to that realization. So next is number 5. No one else is responsible for my happiness. It's a bit similar to no one else owes me anything. It was also a tough pill to swallow at times because it really takes you out of the victim mentality. It kind of makes you stand on your own 2 feet and take responsibility for everything that's happening in your life. Because if no one else is responsible for my happiness, then the only responsible person is me. Not my partner, not my parents, not my co-workers, not my job, not my environment, not my country, not my president, it's just me. So actually, when you take the responsibility out of all those people or circumstances, you get back your own energy by doing this, and you can actually point it towards your own growth. For me, I found it very liberating because the energy that I spent before on blaming, on finding injustice, on defending my own limitations, that kind of energy just came back to me and I was ready to move forward. So I must say this lesson was really worth it. Alright, let's move to number 6. Life is not trying to make me suffer, it's trying to help me grow. This really takes the sweet spot out of suffering, which is being able to complain, being able to find injustice, like in the previous life lesson already mentioned, because you now have a reminder every time something happens or every time you feel something that it's not actually given to make you suffer, which leads to the conclusion that you can do something about it so that you don't suffer. But so that you grow, so that you learn, so that you experience new things. So if life is actually helping me, then if I don't understand something, I can maybe look for answers. I can reach out to people instead of making up stories in my own head, which eventually make me suffer even more. So in fact, I now have a choice. Instead of the default that I maybe had before was like, oh, I couldn't do anything about it because that person didn't answer, or I didn't get enough information there, I was not able to figure it out. And so yeah, I had the legitimate right to suffer. I must say it takes a lot of courage to actually live this principle. Because, the default is always easy. Like I said before, blaming, justifying, criticizing is no longer the better choice. So now we finally come to number 7, which is, there's no such thing as coincidence. Now that must be a shocker for all the atheists out there, but I must say it doesn't need to be confused with magical thinking. It's often what superstitions are based on. It's more about recognizing that there are causes behind things even if we can't see them directly. That there are certain things that we might not be able to comprehend fully, but it doesn't mean that they're not there. So psychologically wise, what that statement gives you is the ability to see that there are certain reasons why you are with a certain partner, or why you're alone, or why you're in a certain place. It's not some sort of injustice or some coincidence. It's just a result of some decisions that you made in the past. And it actually gives you the ability to be more present wherever you are. For example, if you understand that the video that you're watching is not a coincidence, it means that something in you was ready to hear this information. It means that something in you moved you towards certain people, moved you towards certain life situations. It makes you look at your life in a more responsible way. And at the same time recognize that you're not the center of the universe that knows everything. Okay, let's check out the next principle. Number 8 sounds like this. Everyone is able to live their own life. Now I found there's a huge difference between supporting someone when it's needed and actually doing the work for them, which is basically what I call playing God. It's when you're not trusting that the person will be fine without you. Or if you think that if you're not going to do all the work, then it's not going to get done, no one will do it. It's when you think of yourself, you must do it all, and you end up just taking way too many responsibilities that are not yours to take. And it can also put you in a position where you think that you can't make any mistakes, it has to be perfect, you must meet all the deadlines. It's also about not giving just random advice when it's not asked for. So it's actually when you recognize that everyone is actually doing fine, even if you're not around. People can still manage, people can still live their life. Alright, time to move on to the next one. Here's number 9. It's not about being perfect, it's about being true. And it means that what matters most is how sincere we are. The thing is that when you're striving for perfection, it can quickly put you in a situation where you start blocking your own progress because you think, oh, it's not the right time yet, or the circumstances are not right, or I didn't yet collect the right amount of resources, and the list can go on. And another thing which is really interesting is that if you were actually able to attain perfection, it would also mean that you can't learn or grow anymore in that area of life, which is a total contradiction to how reality actually works. So only when you're sincere are you actually able to learn and grow. And what sincerity does is it opens up the portal towards your true self without any masks. Because why do we put on masks? Because oftentimes we just want to be recognized by the people, or we want to get some love, or we want to get some attention, some validation, some recognition. The list of the things that we seek to get from other people is endless. And also, when you dare to be your true self, then you can also start seeing people for who they are, instead of the masks that they may have put on for whatever reason. So for me, that statement alone is just very liberating. When it comes to my personal life, when it comes to my spiritual life, my professional life, in all areas of life, basically, sincerity is everything. And I noticed that when you're sincere, you're also more open. And when you're open, people are willing to help you when you face some difficulties. So for me, it's just one of the most important and liberating principles. The 10th life lesson that I learned is that it's impossible to move forward in life without guidance. This one is really about the importance of having teachers, mentors, coaches, therapists, you name it. Because if we try to do anything on our own, we're just stuck in our own conditioning. And I'm talking about all areas of life, not just spiritual life, where a teacher is absolutely necessary. Because think about it, even if you think you're doing some self-study or you're researching a topic, you're still using someone else's resources. You're still reading books that are written by other people. So you're still using guidance, even though you may not always realize it. It's easy to fall into the trap of the ego that thinks that I'm doing all the work, no one is helping me, I'm just doing everything by myself. So for me, it's just about being in the student mentality and recognizing that I may not have all the answers and that I don't need to know everything. There's no need to outsmart anyone. And in reality, I might even look ridiculous when trying to do so. It's a bit like thinking that you're riding the bicycle by yourself perfectly until you see that there are actually 2 safety wheels attached on the sides. So for me, this principle is a lot about humility and recognizing your own position in life. In short, it's about recognizing and reminding myself that I'm not God. Now we come to number 11. It's not about defending your limitations. It's about making space for solutions. To me, that's about the inner control freak that thinks he's the smartest one and that tries his best to prove to other people how impossible something is. how it's not the right time to move forward, how there's not enough money, how there's not enough time, how there's not enough energy, how there's always not enough something. And he thinks he is looking at things objectively. But in reality, he's just sabotaging his own progress by defending the limits. Now, why is it so tempting to defend the limits? Because you think that it's genuinely impossible to live in another reality where things are possible, when you can take up this course, when you can go to a masterclass, when you don't have to be alone, when life isn't so hard, when you don't have to make it hard. So you can get into that kind of limiting mindset when you're so used to not getting the things you want. And so when you get around an opportunity that could possibly make a change, you look at it from an old lens, from an old perspective where things were not as you wanted them to be. And at that time, you're just not in the present moment. You're still in the past when something didn't work out. But life invites you to move forward, so it's better to take that chance. And finally, we have come to the last life lesson that I'm going to cover in this video. It really has a special place in my heart. Number 12 sounds like this. I don't fully know who I can be in this life. This one is all about expansion, about letting go of all the conditioning, of all the things that you heard about yourself, of all the things that you believed about yourself, about who you could be in this life, about what you could do. I'll give you an example. Right now, I'm recording my first song, which is something that I didn't think I would actually be doing because I'm not a singer, I'm not a songwriter. Those are the things that I believed about myself. And if someone told me 10 years ago that I would have my own song and that I would go to acting school, I would think they were crazy. Because I didn't think that those things were possible for me, because I thought an actor is someone that has taken up acting since they were 5 years old. But me at my age, what can I do? How can I start something new that I haven't learned before, that I don't have a degree in? How to actually go and do something that I'm not used to? It's really about the fact that I don't know my full potential at a certain moment in time. Because the truth is that I still keep learning things about myself. Because if I don't keep learning, I become closed and I'm stuck, and then no one can help me, no one can guide me towards something better. So I find that the more I let go of old beliefs about myself, the more I'm opening up to new experiences, and I can actually have these new experiences. So this is in fact what makes life richer, more interesting, more fascinating, more surprising, and what makes you feel more and more alive every day. If you found some of these reflections meaningful, and if you did, feel free to share it in the comments. I'll be very glad to read about your experience. Have a fantastic day and see you in the next video.